Hey everybody, welcome to SaltyOldGamer, where we're on an airsoft journey and we're sharing everything we learn along the way. And today we're talking about HPAs. Specifically, do HPAs like Polarstar ruin the airsoft experience? It's a very polarizing topic in the airsoft community right now that you don't want to miss, and you may have a strong opinion on, so stay tuned. Welcome everybody. So let's talk about HPAs. So if you've been following the airsoft community this year, you've probably heard about some fields that have been banning HPAs or segregating HPAs from the rest of the field, or in some cases putting more restrictive limits on HPA users. And we'll talk in a little bit about why that last one's probably a futile effort. But first, if you don't follow it that close, you may be sitting there asking, what the heck is this HPA that you're talking about? So HPA is a high pressure air system that is used to power the gun. And it's usually an external tank with a regulator that powers the engine of the gun. Now, HPA has really become kind of synonymous with fusion engines like Polarstar or Woverine, which are basically highly configurable HPA and battery hybrid engines that drop into the body of a gun. And strictly speaking, HPA is really top-end tech, and it's got a lot of really great things going for it. You can drop these engines down into a lot of popular gun bodies. It is super adjustable. You can adjust just about everything on it. You can adjust the rate of fire, the FPS, the trigger reset, the trigger response. I mean, you can get really amazing trigger response. And the engine itself is really light because it doesn't have all that heavy metal gearbox. And no doubt, it's really fun to use. I mean, I would like to have one myself. HPA systems have been around for years now, but they're not a fad anymore. They're pretty mainstream, despite the cost. You're gonna see them everywhere. So it begs the question, what's the problem? So what's causing the problems with HPAs is really largely all of the things that make HPAs good to start with. You can adjust the rate of fire, you can adjust the FPS, and you can search the internet and YouTube right now, and you can find lots of videos of people out there that are getting 60, 70 rounds per second and 600 all the way up to close to 700 feet per second out of HPA systems. It's kind of crazy. And even though HPAs, they're not anything really particularly new, they just have gained tremendous popularity over the last year. And fields just really haven't caught up to the technology and how they chrono and provide safety measures for HPA. They don't chrono for jewel creep. And I have yet to play at a single field since we've started playing where fields have properly tied off HPA users' regulators so that they cannot be modified during gameplay. And that's key. Because all too often, it seems, players are yielding to that temptation and cranking those numbers up. Now, there's a lot of well-known YouTube creators out there that are also HPA users and have made videos on this topic, and a lot of them have made the point that we should be looking at the player, not the equipment, and that we're really only talking about a very small number of bad eggs, like 10% of HPA users. And they're absolutely right. The problem is the player, not the equipment. But I disagree that we're talking about 10% of the population of HPA users. When you're at your local field and people give that collective groan when you see those, hoses, it's not because they're jumping on the let's hate HPA bandwagon. It's because all of them have their own horrific HPA story and bad HPA experiences. It's well beyond anecdotal evidence at this point because the sheer volume of HPA incidents and bad actors and videos that are out there for you to find yourself and watch. It just clearly shows that. And I have to admit, we have our own really bad HPA story, which I'm not going to go into in this video, but rightly or wrongly, I do assume when I see an HPA user that they're probably cranking it up on the field. And the reason why I think this way is, maybe I'm a little jaded, but I like to think I'm drawing on a wealth of experience. I've been involved in the gaming community in some form or fashion for 25 years. I've been on sponsored paintball teams for years. I've admin gaming ladders. I've started gaming clans. I have won gaming ladders multiple times. I've done anti-cheat adminning for a while. And those things kind of open your eyes. You're always going to have those people out there that are going to cheat no matter what. They're going to go out and they're going to buy the cheat client no matter what it costs them per month. They're going to play until they get banned, and then they're going to buy a new copy of the game until they get hardware banned, and then they're going to buy a new hard drive, or maybe they're even going to set up their hard drive in an array so they can't get hardware banned. But point being, there's some people out there, they're going to cheat no matter what it takes, no matter how much it costs, and that's probably the 10%. Then you've got a middle ground of people where, you know, their tendency to cheat is going to immediately correspond to how hard it is to cheat. And we have to be honest about the fact that HPA systems may attract the kind of players that want to skirt the rules a little bit. They want an FPS advantage, they want an RPM advantage, and by the very nature of that demographic, they're going to be people that are probably a little bit more prone to do things like overshoot or break other field limits as well. And we also have to take an honest look at the argument that some people make about, well, you know, we should let the refs handle it, that's why they're there, but the refs can't be everywhere all the time to handle it, and you know, sometimes they just won't, and situations are sometimes pretty subjective. And for all the good tech that HPA systems are, there are some negatives to that technology. And you know, one of the biggest ones is the fact that you got a big tank stuck somewhere on your body, usually in a backpack, with a hose running under your arm or over your arm, or some way you've got to, you know, figure out how to not have it obstruct your aim or your movement. Probably the biggest negative is they're super expensive. To build an HPA system, you've already got to have a gun that you can drop the engine into, so that's a couple $100. You have to have the engine itself, that's $500. And then you got to have an air system. You know, you got to have the hose, the tank, and the regulator, and that's easily going to set you back about $300. You know, before it's all said and done, you're all in for over $1,000. You know, the next gen AEG technology out there right now is really, really good. And you know, for $1,000, you could build a pretty sweet AEG, or you could just go to someone that specializes in it, like Umbrella Armory. For $1,000, you can buy a Crytac with a Prometheus barrel that's R-hopped, an upgraded bucking, an upgraded engine, countless upgrades already done for you. So, you know, I would love to have an HPA system for no other reasons than you can get really good distance out of them, and you can set up a gun to be really super quiet.
Right here, barricade. Wait. Okay.
But, you know, for $1,000, still, I don't know, man. I might have to go with that super sweet, pimped out Crytek from Umbrella Armory. I mean, if you've ever watched Dutch the Hooligan, you know those guns are sweet. So again, it goes back to maybe HPA systems are attracting a specific type of player. So what do we do now? I'm in no way advocating a ban on HPAs. I don't agree with that. You know, HPAs are great technology, and there's a lot of really great players out there using them that shouldn't be punished. So how do we fix the problem? Because this is an honor sport, and when the honor part of that breaks down, what do? You know, I think making sure that field owners are properly chronoing HPA systems and tying off those regulators appropriately, you know, that's a really great place to start. Now, I'm sure, as always, there's a lot of you out there that are disagreeing with my take on this, and maybe some of you are even a little bit salty. So tell us what you think in the comments below. What's your take on this whole HPA hate thing that's grown up this year, and what do you suggest? And you know, we really appreciate you liking and sharing and commenting on these videos. And while you're here, check out some of the other controversial commentaries we've got out there. You know, like, do Bang Bang rules work? Which a lot of people have strong opinions about, or especially, is speed soft cancer? That's one that always gets some interesting responses. And definitely join us on our airsoft journey by hitting that subscribe button so you don't miss a single video. We're gonna go read some of these comments because we're looking forward to seeing what you have to say. So we'll see you next time.